Welcome to the great outdoors.
Yo, everybody.
Get all situated here.
Morning coffee today is going to be a little different. Instead of watching me make coffee, you're going to watch me drink it. We're going to do so out here, and I'm going to unzip this a little bit just so the mic doesn't get all messed up. Good morning. Happy Wednesday to you. Decided to shake things up a bit, record some of this stuff outside, which I think is kind of fun. Puts us in a good spot, and of course the the bear is sitting at the door staring at me like, how dare you go out there without letting me in. Well, today what I wanted to do is kind of bridge some of the gap. Yesterday we talked about what happened immediately after I left Infusionsoft the first time. And I want to talk about the kind of bridge between that and then when I came back the first time and sort of what happened from there. So like I said, I went and I was serving a Mormon mission in Ukraine. And I think I mentioned yesterday, I should have mentioned, it was one of the coldest winters that they had in like half a century. Big difference between half a decade and half a century, by the way. Coming from Arizona and not really knowing how to walk when there's snow and ice and things, I had no context. I had no way of knowing what you're supposed to do, how you're supposed to walk, what changes you're supposed to make. I learned, obviously, but when I was first there, I had a couple of instances where we were walking, and because I didn't know what I was doing, I slipped and messed up my knees, and I messed them up pretty bad. And you know, in hindsight, I don't think that I messed them up as bad as I thought they were messed up at the time. And I think, you know, there's a core lesson that underlies a couple of things here. And it looks a little bit different depending on which side of it you're looking at. So number one, I didn't understand my footing. I didn't know where I was. I hadn't found my footing in Ukraine, and I didn't understand what was around me. Like, I didn't really get that there's a certain way that you walk when you're in Ukraine, right? I didn't really understand how it was supposed to be done, and I didn't really get what was happening. And it's kind of, it's true in so many different arenas. In fighting, if you just jump in and you're not warmed up, or you don't know what you're getting into. I mean, there's plenty of examples. If you look on YouTube, stylistic matchups where a Muay Thai fighter goes up against a Taekwondo black belt, and it's just a different game. And Taekwondo guys, if they can manage to land enough strikes fast enough, Muay Thai isn't about speed. Not in the same way that Taekwondo is. And in the same way, Taekwondo is not about power like Muay Thai is. So if a Muay Thai fighter can land a good solid rib kick or a good solid low kick, especially, that's usually what ends up happening, it's over. But at the same time, if the Taekwondo person can overwhelm the Muay Thai fighter, there's, you can't hold that, you can't sustain that. And it's the same thing when I was trying to walk around over there in Ukraine, not understanding my environment and not really having a good understanding of what it is that I was supposed to be doing, regardless of why I didn't know how to walk in Ukraine is irrelevant. It doesn't matter. Like, it matters to me because I can at least tell the story and say, well, I grew up in Arizona. We had never had to walk on ice before. But it has no bearing on whether or not I messed myself up because of it. And I did. And I messed myself up pretty bad. At least I thought I did. And it got to the point where we went and saw, we got an MRI on my knee. An MRI in Ukraine they don't have the same technology that we do, so it wasn't as definitive. But the guy said I had torn my ACL. Well, I ended up getting sent home to get my ACL fixed. And when I got home, they did another MRI, and the guy was like, there's no tear. I don't see a tear. And so to break the tie, they scoped it. They went in and actually did some surgery on it. And the funny thing is, the second half of that same thing is, since then, I've kind of had a major shift in what I consider to be an injury. I think back then I was just very sensitive to things that were happening. And I think part of it is because, like in the previous example, I didn't have my footing in my environment. I didn't really have my footing for myself. Like, I didn't really know what I was capable of. and what I could sustain and what I could withstand. And that actually became a very important lesson that came into play much later when I started fighting Muay Thai, because I realized there's a line in Muay Thai that if you cross, bones break. But what I realized was the context around, it takes a lot for bones to break. And if bones aren't going to break, then it's just temporary pain. And what that allowed me to realize is that I can withstand a lot more, I can take a lot more damage to my legs, to my shins, to my hands, to my face, without actually getting hurt. Which means my threshold for pain is a lot higher. So there's a lot of things that used to happen, like if you would do leg checking drills, and I would check, even with shin guards, check a bunch of leg kicks, my shins would get really sore. And I would go into every training session and it would be like, just kicking was painful. Kicking the bag was painful. And finally I realized, like, I'm not actually hurt. Nothing actually happened. And it completely changed my outlook. And now I'll kick elbows, I'll mash my toes, like I'll kick really, really hard kicks and stuff. And sometimes I have massive hematomas on my shins, but I come back the next week and I do the same thing, and it doesn't affect me as much because I realize I know who I am. I found my footing with myself. And I think that's an important lesson, just in general, to understand anywhere you are, in a job, in a company, starting your own business, consulting, freelancing, whatever it is that you're doing, understanding, like having a real clear understanding of where you are, and not only where you are physically, but like your environment emotionally, metaphorically, all of that, but also really understanding yourself and how you fit. Gary Vee calls it self-awareness. And I think that's a good way of looking at it. Being aware of yourself and also everything that's around you. Because you can't really adapt to your surroundings if you don't really know what it is you're talking about or looking at. So today's video is a little shorter, partially because it's cold out here and I want to go back inside, but also because I think that's a fairly succinct point. And that actually, coming home from my mission to get my knee surgerized, as I said back then, was the reintroduction. That was the first time that I came back to Infusionsoft. So tomorrow, what's tomorrow? Thursday. Tomorrow, we're going to talk about coming back to Infusionsoft and the changes that had happened at Infusionsoft in the time that I was gone. And it'll be a lot of fun. Later today, today being Wednesday, later today there's going to be, I'm going to start doing some Way Back Wednesday posts. So a lot of those videos that I featured last week in some of those, like the old school footage videos, I'm going to start to just release them on Wednesdays, which will be a lot of fun. So look out for that later today. There's just going to be some random footage of some people. There's some really, really funny ones. So check that out. And I'll see you back here tomorrow, Monday Morning Coffee, except not on Monday because tomorrow's Thursday or whatever. I don't even know what the dates are anymore. Peace.